Evelyn Carter clutched her small worn purse tightly as she stepped off the plane, her heart fluttering with both excitement and nervousness. She had trusted her son Daniel when he said this trip would help her heal after Robert's passing. Melissa had assured her that everything was planned: tickets, luggage, even a cozy spot to rest before their journey home. Evelyn had believed them because she wanted to believe in her family. But as the crowds thinned at Nashville Airport, reality set in. Daniel and Melissa walked ahead briskly, their expensive suitcases rolling smoothly across the floor. Evelyn struggled to keep up, her old shoes scuffing against the polished tiles. When she finally caught up, Melissa turned with a sharp smile. "This is it, Evelyn," Melissa said, her voice cold. "Your ticket was one way. You're on your own now." Evelyn blinked, confused. "What do you mean? Where is my luggage? My return ticket?" Her voice cracked with a mix of fear and disbelief. Daniel avoided her eyes, shifting uncomfortably, while Melissa's expression hardened. "We don't have time to explain. You'll figure it out." With that, Melissa tugged Daniel's arm, and the two walked away without looking back. Evelyn stood frozen, surrounded by the constant hum of announcements and rolling suitcases. Passengers hurried past her, families reunited in joyful embraces, friends laughing as they headed out together. She, however, was utterly— Evelyn's voice wavered as she tried again, her hands clutching at Daniel's sleeve. "There must be some mistake. Daniel, you said this trip would be good for me. You promised we would all go together." Daniel's arm stiffened under her grip, but he still refused to meet her eyes. His gaze lingered on the floor tiles as if they held the answers he could not give his mother. Evelyn searched his face for a shred of compassion, a hint of the little boy she once held in her arms, but all she found was silence. Melissa, on the other hand, stood tall and smug. Her lips curved into a smile that carried no warmth, only cruelty. "It wasn't a mistake, Evelyn," she said, each word sharp as glass. "Your ticket was always one way. Didn't you realize that? We can't carry you forever." The words struck like a slap across Evelyn's heart. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. "But how could you? After everything I've given, after Robert," her husband's name trembled on her lips, but she couldn't finish the thought. Melissa's smile only widened, a glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. "You'll figure something out. You always do. Perhaps sell your phone, take a bus, there are options if you're clever enough." She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. 2 months earlier, Evelyn Carter's world had unraveled. The steady presence of Robert, her husband of 40 years, was gone in a single quiet moment. One evening they had sat together on the porch, sipping tea and talking about the roses Robert wanted to prune come spring. By morning, Evelyn was alone with a silence so vast it seemed to press against her chest, stealing her breath. The days that followed blurred together. Funeral arrangements, condolences from neighbors, the endless paperwork that came with loss. Evelyn moved through it all like a shadow, doing what was required but feeling nothing. The house, once alive with Robert's laugh and gentle footsteps, had become a tomb of memories. Every chair he had sat in, every book he had touched, whispered his absence. Her children had watched her with concern, or at least that was how she had understood it then. Daniel had told her gently, "Mom, you can't just sit in that house alone. You need a change. You need to heal." Melissa had chimed in, persuasive and smooth, "A trip will be good for you. Fresh air, new places, something to take your mind off things." Evelyn had wanted to believe them. She was so tired of waking in the night to reach for Robert's hand only to find the cold emptiness beside her. She thought perhaps they were right. Perhaps travel could offer a distraction from grief. Perhaps her children truly— The ring had never left Evelyn's finger in 35 years. A simple band of gold with a delicate engraving of leaves, chosen by Robert himself. It was more than jewelry. It was a symbol of their journey, their love, their promises kept through decades of hardship and joy. When Robert slipped it onto her hand on their 30th anniversary, he had whispered, "This is forever, Evelyn." After his death, the ring had become her anchor. On the nights when grief threatened to drown her, she would twist it gently, feeling the warmth of his memory radiating through her skin. It was as if Robert's hand still rested on hers. So when Melissa suggested the trip, Evelyn hesitated. I don't know if I can afford it, she had admitted softly. Daniel had looked at her with what she thought was sympathy. Don't worry, Mom. We'll all contribute. Just see what you can manage. It will mean a lot. Evelyn had gone to her bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the ring. She had never imagined parting with it. But the thought of making the trip together, of honoring Robert's memory by taking a step toward life again, persuaded her. Her children had framed it as a family effort, and she wanted to believe in that unity. The next morning, she walked into a small pawn shop on the corner of Main Street. Evelyn's small bedroom was filled with quiet anticipation as she laid an old suitcase on the bed. Its hinges squeaked when she opened it, the same suitcase she and Robert had once taken on weekend trips to the mountains. The memories came rushing back, Robert carrying it with one hand, teasing her about overpacking while she laughed and pretended to scold him. Now, she moved more slowly, folding each piece of clothing with care. She chose only the essentials: 2 plain dresses, a couple of blouses, and her softest sweater, the one Robert had bought her during a chilly autumn fair. She pressed it to her face for a moment, breathing in the faint scent of lavender soap, imagining his arms around her. On her nightstand sat a framed photograph of Robert, smiling with that familiar warmth that had once been her whole world. Evelyn picked it up and held it against her chest. You'll come with me, she whispered. She wrapped the frame in a scarf and placed it gently on top of her folded clothes, as though protecting a treasure. Melissa had assured her, don't worry about bringing too much. We'll handle everything. Daniel had nodded, adding, just pack what makes you comfortable, Mom. Evelyn stood at the airline counter, her worn purse clutched tightly in both hands. The clerk, a young woman with a polished uniform and polite smile, typed rapidly on her keyboard, the clicking of the keys filling the silence. Evelyn waited patiently, rehearsing in her mind how she would ask about her return flight. Melissa had told her everything was already arranged, after all. The clerk paused, frowning slightly at the screen. I'm sorry, ma'am, she said, her tone careful. I don't see a return ticket booked under your name. Evelyn blinked. There must be some mistake. My son and daughter-in-law arranged it. We were supposed to fly back together. She tried to steady her voice, but panic began to curl inside her chest. The clerk typed again, shaking her head. I've checked multiple times. There's only a one-way ticket here. Nothing for the return. The words struck her harder than she expected. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as she glanced over her shoulder, hoping Daniel might step forward and correct the misunderstanding. But when her eyes found him, he was staring at the floor, hands shoved into his pockets, as if he wished to disappear. Melissa stood beside him, her lips curved in that familiar sharp smile, offering no explanation. Evelyn turned back to the clerk, her throat dry. Could you check again, please? They told me. Her voice faltered under the weight of realization. The clerk's expression softened with pity, but the answer didn't change. Evelyn stood frozen, her suitcase at her feet, the boarding gates buzzing with the rush of travelers around her. She had just stepped back from the counter, her heart still reeling from the humiliating news, when Melissa's heels clicked sharply against the tile. Her daughter-in-law's expression was cool, triumphant even, as though she had been waiting for this exact moment. Well, Melissa said, her voice cutting through the noise, I suppose you'll figure something out. Maybe sell your phone for bus money. People do that all the time, don't they? Her words dripped with disdain, each syllable designed to wound. Evelyn stared at her, the words sinking in like shards of glass. Melissa, why? Her voice trembled, searching for the faintest glimmer of compassion, some explanation that could make sense of this cruelty. But Melissa only shrugged, her smile sharp and unyielding. We've done enough. You'll manage. Evelyn's eyes turned desperately toward Daniel. Her son, her own flesh and blood, stood rigid a step behind his wife. He refused to meet her gaze, his shoulders tense, his face pale. His silence screamed louder than words. Daniel, Evelyn whispered, her throat tightening. Say something. Please. But he didn't. He kept his head down. Evelyn sat alone on a cold metal bench in the corner of the terminal, her suitcase beside her, her hands trembling around her phone. Just minutes earlier, her world had collapsed beneath the weight of betrayal. The temptation to cry, to surrender to despair, pressed hard against her chest. But then she thought of Robert, steady, kind Robert, who had always told her, "When people show you who they are, Evelyn, don't close your eyes. Stand tall, even if it hurts." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, took a deep breath, and scrolled through her contacts until she found a familiar name, Mr. Harris. He was Robert's longtime friend and lawyer, a man she had trusted for decades. Her finger hovered for a moment before she pressed call. The line clicked, and his warm but steady voice answered. "Evelyn? It's been a while. How are you holding up?" Her throat tightened, but she forced her voice to remain calm. "Not well, Mr. Harris. I need your help. I've just realized my children aren't who I thought they were." He was silent for a moment, his understanding heavy in the pause. "Tell me what happened," he said gently. Evelyn explained in halting words, her voice trembling as she described the one-way ticket, Melissa's cruel remark, and Daniel's devastating silence. Each word. Evelyn had always been careful, a habit born from years of managing a household on modest means with Robert. He used to tease her for tucking away rainy day money in odd places, the lining of her purse, the pocket of an old coat, even inside the cover of her Bible. After his death, she had kept up the practice, more out of comfort than necessity. Now, standing in the terminal with her heart still raw, that quiet foresight became her salvation. She slipped into the restroom, locking herself in a stall. From the inner pocket of her worn purse, she drew out a folded envelope, crisp bills neatly stacked inside. Her fingers lingered on them, the weight of Robert's voice in her memory. "Always have something set aside, Evelyn. You never know when you'll need it." Tears pricked her eyes, but this time they weren't just from sorrow. They were from relief. She wasn't as helpless as Melissa believed. Within the hour, Evelyn was in the back seat of a taxi, her suitcase on the seat beside her. The city blurred past the window, neon signs, busy streets, the fading glow of afternoon sunlight. She kept her eyes forward, determination settling deeper with every mile. When the cab pulled up in front of Mr. Harris's office, Evelyn paid the driver in cash, her hand steady. She walked through the glass doors and into the quiet, wood-paneled lobby. The receptionist looked up with polite surprise. "Mrs. Carter? Mr. Harris is expecting you." The lamplight in Mr. Harris's office glowed warmly against a polished oak desk, casting a soft circle of light around the papers spread before Evelyn. Her pen hovered above the will, her name printed neatly at the bottom of the page, waiting for her signature. She paused, her breath steadying as the weight of the moment settled in. For years, she had imagined her legacy passing naturally to her children, a final act of love, a way of saying thank you for being my family. But that dream had shattered on the cold tile of the airport floor. Love could not be forced, nor could loyalty be bought. She had learned that bitter truth in the cruelest way. Now she had the chance to turn that pain into something greater. "Mr. Harris," she said softly, lifting her eyes from the document, "I want everything to go to Elder Haven. It's a place that makes sure people like me, people left behind, have somewhere safe, somewhere kind." Mr. Harris's gaze softened with respect. "That's a noble choice, Evelyn. Robert would be proud." The mention of Robert's name filled her chest with warmth, chasing away the lingering sting of betrayal. She could almost hear his voice, gentle but firm. "If life hands you sorrow, Evelyn, turn it into kindness." Her grip on the pen tightened, and with a decisive stroke, she signed her name. The sound of the ink scratching across paper felt final, like the closing of one. The motel room was small, its floral wallpaper faded and its furniture worn with age, but to Evelyn, it felt like sanctuary. She closed the door behind her, the lock clicking softly into place, and set her suitcase down on the scuffed carpet. For the first time since the airport, she was truly alone, yet instead of despair, she felt an unexpected calm. She placed Robert's framed photo on the bedside table, the glass catching the glow of the lamp. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she reached out and touched the frame. "We're all right, Robert," she whispered. "I'm all right." The sheets smelled faintly of detergent, rougher than the linens she had at home, but they welcomed her just the same. She slipped off her shoes and stretched out, the weight of the day finally pressing down. Exhaustion tugged at her bones, yet beneath it lay something new: strength. For years, she had defined herself by her roles: wife, mother, caretaker. When Robert died, she had clung to her children, believing they would be her anchor in the storm. But tonight, lying in a modest motel bed with only her thoughts for company, she realized she didn't need them to stand. She had made it here on her own. She had called the lawyer. She had rewritten her will. She had chosen her own path. A quiet goodbye lingered on her lips, not just to Daniel and Melissa, but to the woman she had been only days ago, trusting, dependent. The old Carter house stood quiet in the afternoon sun, its shutters peeling and the garden untended since Robert's passing. Evelyn paused on the porch, her hand brushing the wooden rail where Robert used to sit and sip his morning coffee. The ache in her chest was sharp, but this time it wasn't paralyzing. She had come to say goodbye. The movers carried out the boxes she had carefully packed, just a handful, really. Her softest sweater, Robert's photo, the quilt her mother had stitched, a few books with her notes scribbled in the margins. She took nothing more, not because she couldn't, but because she no longer wanted to drag the weight of the past with her. Inside, the rooms felt hollow. The walls echoed with memories of birthdays, arguments, laughter, and the countless little moments that made up a life. Evelyn walked slowly through each one, her fingers tracing the grooves in the dining room table, the doorframe marked with her children's heights. Each touch was a farewell. When the last box was loaded, she returned to the kitchen counter, where a single sheet of paper waited. In her neat, deliberate handwriting, she had left a message for Daniel and Melissa. Don't call. Don't ask. Nothing more. Nothing less. She didn't owe them explanations, and she wouldn't give them the chance to twist her words. The note was not spite, it was closure. She folded it once and left it on the counter, weighed down by the ring of spare house keys she no longer needed. The gates of Willow Grove stood open, framed by climbing roses and ivy that spilled over the brick archway. As the taxi pulled up, Evelyn pressed her hand to the window, her heart beating fast. She had seen photos of the senior living community, but nothing compared to the warmth that greeted her now. The buildings, painted in soft cream and green, looked less like an institution and more like a welcoming village. A staff member met her at the entrance, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a bright smile. "Mrs. Carter? We've been expecting you. Welcome to Willow Grove." She reached for Evelyn's suitcase as if it were no trouble at all, treating her not like a burden, but like a guest of honor. Inside, the halls smelled faintly of fresh bread and coffee, not antiseptic. Laughter drifted from a common room, where a group of residents gathered around a puzzle, their voices rising in cheerful debate over where the last corner piece belonged. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt the tension in her shoulders ease. Her new apartment was modest but bright, with sunlight spilling through wide windows that looked out over a garden of lavender and roses. On the small table by the window, staff had placed a vase of fresh flowers with a note: "Welcome home." Evelyn set Robert's framed photo on the dresser and smoothed the quilt across her new bed. It wasn't the Carter family house, but it was hers. And here, in this place partly funded by the donation she had made to Elder Haven, she knew her presence was more than symbolic. She was part of something larger, a circle of care and compassion. Later the days at Willow Grove unfolded with a gentle rhythm, each one weaving new threads of connection into Evelyn's life. At first, she kept to herself, unsure if she belonged in this community of strangers. But little by little, the walls around her heart began to soften. One afternoon, she wandered into the sunlit library where a group was gathered around a circle of chairs. "Book club," someone called cheerfully. "Come join us." They were discussing a novel she had read years ago with Robert. Hesitant at first, Evelyn offered a thought, and the group welcomed her insight with smiles and nods. By the end of the meeting, she was laughing freely, her voice blending with theirs. Another day, she found herself in the art room, the air smelling faintly of turpentine and clay. Brushes and canvases waited on easels, and an instructor encouraged everyone to paint whatever came to mind. Evelyn dipped her brush into blue paint, her strokes uncertain at first. But soon she lost herself in the motion, the color blossoming into a rough but heartfelt image of a sunrise. When another resident leaned over and whispered, "That's beautiful," Evelyn felt her cheeks warm, not with embarrassment, but with joy. Evenings often ended in the courtyard, where small groups gathered around tables. It started with one call. Evelyn's phone, resting quietly on the table beside her tea, lit up with Daniel's name. For a moment, her heart stumbled. A part of her, the part that still remembered the boy who used to run into her arms after school, ached to answer. But she didn't. She simply turned the phone face down and let it ring into silence. The next day, the calls multiplied. Morning, afternoon, evening. Sometimes he left voicemails, his voice strained and desperate. "Mom, please, you have to talk to me. This isn't what you think. Call me back." Other times, there was only silence after the beep, as if he couldn't find the words. Evelyn knew why he was calling. Mr. Harris had mailed the official notices weeks ago. Daniel and Melissa would have received them by now. The cold, legal confirmation that they had been cut out of her will. That everything they expected to inherit was gone, redirected to Elder Haven and Willow Grove. Sitting in the bright courtyard with her new friends, Evelyn would sometimes feel the faint buzz of her phone in her pocket. She no longer felt panic or guilt. Instead, she felt a quiet clarity. Every ring was a reminder of a choice she had made with open eyes. A choice to no longer be manipulated by silence, cruelty, or convenience. The subject line read, "Please, Mom." Evelyn found it one morning as she sipped her coffee in Willow Grove's sunlit lounge. She hesitated before opening it, her finger hovering above the screen. Part of her already knew what it would say.
"Still," she tapped.
Daniel's words spilled across the page, frantic yet carefully framed. "Mom, I know you're upset, but please don't take everything away. At least let us keep the family garden. You know how much it means to me. Melissa, and I can take care of it. It's part of our legacy, part of you and Dad. Please, don't erase us completely. We're still your family." Evelyn read the message twice, her expression calm. The garden, Robert's pride and joy, was not what Daniel mourned.
He mourned control.
He mourned the inheritance he and Melissa had assumed was theirs. The garden had only become precious when the rest was gone. She set the tablet down on the table and gazed out the window. Beyond the glass, residents were tending Willow Grove's shared flower beds, their laughter rising as one woman held up a crooked tomato plant for all to admire. Evelyn smiled faintly. Here, gardens grew not from ownership or entitlement, but from care freely given. Her hand brushed against Robert's photo, which now sat by her side wherever she went. "He doesn't want the garden, Robert," she whispered.
"He wants what it represents."
The courtyard of Willow Grove was alive with the hum of conversation and the scent of blooming roses. Evelyn sat beneath a broad oak tree, the sunlight filtering through the leaves, warming her face. A cup of tea rested in her hands, steam curling upward into the crisp morning air. Around her, laughter rang out, residents swapping stories, teasing each other over card games, planning the next book club meeting. It was simple, ordinary, and beautiful. For the first time in what felt like years, Evelyn's heart was light. The ache of betrayal no longer defined her days. Instead, her hours were filled with quiet joys, painting in the studio, sharing meals with friends who genuinely cared, tending a patch of lavender in the community garden. She had found companionship, dignity, and the freedom to live on her own terms. Sometimes, late at night, her thoughts drifted back to Daniel and Melissa. She remembered the airport, the cold smile, the silence that cut deeper than any words. Once, those memories had crushed her. Now they felt like distant echoes. She accepted the truth without bitterness. Her children had lost her trust forever, and that was their burden to carry, not hers. What mattered now was what she had gained. In choosing herself, she had discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. She had traded the fragile hope of conditional love for the solid certainty of self-respect. She had given her legacy to Elder Haven. Thank you for watching Evelyn's journey. If her story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories of courage and resilience. See you in the next video.